Okay, so hey there, I'm Ryan Rosshirt, Vice President of the Austin Young Democrats, and I am here with a couple of candidates for school board, Ophelia and John, and y'all are running for District 2, right? Um, and
Right.
I want to give you all the chance to tell AYD, though they are not here right now, about yourselves. And I'm thinking we can just take turns, but why don't we give let's do like a 2 minute type of just background, who you are, why you're running. You guys have probably given the speech a million times, and we can start with Ophelia if that works.
Okay. Well, thank you, Brian, for bringing us together here. My name is Ophelia Maldonado Zapata. I am an Austinite. I came here when I was 3 years old, so I still claim Austin as home.
Mm-hmm.
I attended schools here in East Austin. I went to Metz and then Becker. We moved to South Austin, went to Becker, Fillmore, and Travis High School. Graduated from Travis High School. I'm one of eight. Grew up in public housing. And so I also graduated being visually impaired, and no one ever knew that. Even my parents didn't know. Um, and even the doctors told them that there wasn't anything wrong with me, so that's why they didn't know. But so I got cheated out of an education in the school district. I graduated. I got a job right away at the state and was not prepared at all, And so I wanted to make sure that my children got a good education and that they would have good experiences in school and they would love school. They would love to learn because I missed out. And so I went to school with them. I worked, I became a young widow and started attending meetings with them and met an organization that helped me find my voice. And always felt because I didn't know I was poor. I didn't know I lived in the poorest neighborhood. But I didn't know that because I only had a high school diploma, I didn't know how to really participate as a parent. How do I help my children? And so I began getting some trainings on how to ask questions, how to just simple questions. And that's what I still see today is parents don't know how to ask the question about their kids. They feel like the teacher knows best and the principals, there's a lot of respect for principals. You don't question the principal. And so that's kind of a mentality that I see and I try to teach parents along the way the last 30 years of how to really advocate for their children. This is your child's education. This is your school. It's not the principal's school. So 30 years now forward, walking and struggling with the families and myself getting access to services for students with disabilities because I have a son who needed services. And this last 4 years, I was a PTA president at Eastside Memorial, and my grandson needed those special needs services. And it's still a fight to get services, and it's 3 generations. And I felt like now it's time. Things don't seem to be moving forward to really help all students have the best quality education. It's very, I feel that they always bring the bar down. They live in this zip code, they have this income, and so their expectation is not there. So that's why I finally decided to step in. A lot of people were calling me, would you consider? And I thought, no way. But the more I talk to my children and grandchildren, they go, why not, Nana? You do everything else. Why not this? So that's why I'm doing it. I want to make some real systemic changes. I think virtual learning has unveiled the systemic racism, and now we have an opportunity to really do some good work and make those changes so all students learn at high levels.
Great, and I definitely have some follow-ups about policy, but I want to give John a chance to just speak a little bit on, on background. And I think that was really informative. I feel like I know a lot about, where you come from now and how you came to run for this. So thanks for that. And I'm going to put you on mute, and I'm going to unmute John. And yeah, so I mean, the question is, give us a couple minutes on, who you are and why you're running.
Well, first I want to thank you and the Austin Young Democrats for inviting me to speak to the issues here at District 2. And I also think that it's great that there's 3 candidates for the seat in District 2, a Chicana like Ofelia, African American like Andy, and a Latino like myself. It shows that people have not felt included in the discussion, and now people want to be included at the Board of Trustees, and then also making issues about the way that the district treats District 2 and the way that families in District 2 feel included or not included, as Ophelia eloquently put it. I am a teacher at Texas State. I've been teaching in Texas for the last 15 years, and I've been teaching for the last 25 years. I come from a family of teachers. My brother is a union negotiator and a teacher in California. My sister's a teacher in Kentucky. And my mother taught high school Spanish as she brought us up in the United States. So I live, eat, and breathe education, but the decision to run for office is not one that came easy for me as a historian. I got involved in the movement to stop school closures here in Austin ISD because the district decided that Dawson, with the 3 other schools in the district, Metz and Brook and Palm, were worthy of closing and consolidating into other schools. And as I got more and more involved in this and more in discussing with other people, I realized that there was actually a lot of hope, that the city of Austin is growing and that the number of kids in the city of Austin are also growing, and the idea that schools are under-enrolled isn't because of the neighborhoods, but because of the way that the school district is drawing boundaries. There are more kids under the age of 18 now than there were 10 years ago, but the school district isn't doing the job to bring working class kids in, Latinos in, African Americans in, and part of that is, of course, the history of segregation and discrimination that Ophelia has lived in this district and that I've experienced in my journeys through the United States and arriving here as well. I think with a new board and a new superintendent, there's hope in the district, and there's hope in District 2 to start changing things, to bring attention to the situations that SPED children have, to the opportunities that District 2 poses for the district. It is, D2 has the highest rent to income ratio in the district, so people are paying taxes both through property taxes, through rent, and through sales taxes disproportionately than other places, and I think that needs to be recognized in terms of the resources that come in. The district also needs to see the schools that are here as resources. Real estate is only going to get more expensive, so people should build on what we have and not try to sell what we have to real estate developers on the opportunity and chance that the district-wide money that this will generate will come back to the district. I think work with the schools that are here already and the families that are here already. I think schools like Brook, which no longer exists, but schools like Dawson and other places have tried to turn their way around to embrace SPED students and dual language students, treat them as opportunities and ways to think more about democracy, ways to be together. And I want to encourage that as a trustee and as a family member with people with disabilities. My sister wasn't diagnosed with dyslexia until she was in graduate school at UT. And my uncle left school at 3rd grade and went on to have a life there, we think also because of dyslexia. So disability has shaped our family's opportunities. And I think it's something that can be worked around and taken seriously as part of the central mission of the district. But ultimately, District 2 is the model of the future of Austin. It's majority Black, majority Latino, both long-standing generational communities here, have been here since Austin got started, but also communities who just arrived and are trying to make a place for themselves. And this community has a long time working with difference and working with immigrant communities and minority communities. I think going forward, the City of Austin and Austin ISD needs to take the people in D2 seriously, because we are kind of where the future lies ahead. I've also been endorsed by the Central Labor Council, Education Austin, Environmental Dems, and South Austin Dems so far. So something that I'm saying here appeals to them as well. But with Ophelia, I just want the district to take D2 families seriously.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think that gives like a good idea of where y'all are coming from and why you're here. And frankly, you know, I like it. I think it's pretty clear in Austin that you know, the deal is not the same for everybody, and that does need to be dealt with. And really, what both of you have said is leading into one of my biggest questions here, right? Which is like, what do you see as the right relationship between Austin and AISD and charter schools? Because my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that, you know, they're providing sort of a premium paid service to people who stand to succeed, right? And they're sort of refusing a lot of other people who need help, right? Those people fall then to the public institutions. And I find that really troubling, that we're losing money to the people who need help the most, to give it to the people who are predisposed to success. And so my question is, you know, I guess, do you agree with that assessment? And what do we do about it? What from your seat on the board of trustees, if you're elected, can you do about that, or do to improve the situation? And I guess we should probably reverse order and start with John this time.
I mean, I have two answers to that question. And the first answer is, you need to know why students are going to charters. Sometimes students are going to charters because parents see charters as the quickest way to get people through college, and some charters promise and guarantee that people get to college and do that. I've had friends establish charters in California and other places because they felt that the needs of their children weren't being met by the school district, and that the charter they established would be better at doing that or not. Charters also have different hours, and sometimes they're more flexible and accommodating to the schedules that working people have. And I think that's something that Austin ISD and school districts across Texas need to start looking into. That said, given that charters can push people out if they have disabilities, or if they come into disabilities in the process, I really have trouble with giving public money to companies who can discriminate on the basis of ability and disciplinary history. So public funds, I think, should be treated with the same kind of oversight in one school as another. So that's my general sort of like problem with charters as far as that goes. I think the school district needs to do three things. One, advertise in languages that people understand the difference between charters, public schools, and private schools. Point out that public schools have to educate every student that's there, and they have to go through a really complicated process to actually expel someone or suspend someone from there. So they have to somehow find ways to educate everyone according to ability. Both that's the law from the ADA, and that's kind of the situation that people have in terms of getting funding. Second, they need to advocate at the TA level to stop Mike Morath from handing money over to charters like Learn for Life that doesn't have the same kind of track record as Navarro High School does in terms of educating people and getting people to graduate in kind of a personalized at-risk kind of situation. I mean, in this case, Austin Public Schools do a really good job at keeping people from not dropping out, at least through Navarro, as far as that goes. And then they just need to tell rural officials as well as urban officials that every student that goes into a charter isn't just the loss of those student dollars for the public school districts, it's also loss of general public school dollars for schools in rural areas, urban areas, and then the additional money that's given to help charters build an infrastructure means every student you lose is like 1.7 times the amount of money being lost to the local school district and the general fund. So charters have a parasitic relationship to schools. So that's why I'm publicly skeptical about charters, but I do know that the impulse to innovate, reform, burn things down to get them started again helps sort of like keep charters going and make them viable for many parents. But I do think that public funds should receive public scrutiny, and there must be ways to sort of like incorporate teachers and staff and students into the kind of democratic oversight that boards of trustees are supposed to provide their schools and their constituencies.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'll pass it back to Ophelia, and I'm really interested in your thoughts. What is the relationship? What is the best relationship or desired relationship between AISD and our charter schools? Hopefully, Ophelia is going to be back shortly.
Oh, there you go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I'll give you the community perspective side because that's where I invested all my time.
You're also
and wondering why
your video's off. I don't know if
oh.
so I just want to get that
Sorry.
for you.
Sorry.
There we go.
Okay, is that you know, parents are following cousins, they're following their family members, they want their kids to go to school together. So a lot of families are just going because their neighbor said it's better. You know, their neighbor says, well, you know, I can help you pick up the kids and that way you can go to work. So it's a lot of times for convenience. So I think what John is saying is true, but what's also true is that it's accommodating for parents. You know, they have to, a lot of their family members have moved to charters, and so they try to keep the family together. And they're finding out that, you know, even though they may have issues, like my 3 grandchildren were in a charter school here at in Dove Springs, and we had a really bad experience. You know, my grandson is dyslexic and he was not getting any kind of support, but he liked being there. But it had to go, you know, we had to make that choice and put him back in public school because he was not, his GPA was just not going anywhere. And at Eastside Memorial, he got awards every month because of his high IT expertise he had. And so although he got the acknowledgement, you know, there wasn't much done with it, you know, like for him to be part of a IT track or a program. So I think that's the issue too, is that our students, special needs students, you know, they're gifted. It's not that we aren't able, we just have to find a different way to learn. And there's all kinds of ways we learn. And so I think my grandson was also cheated of an opportunity to really get connected to like Apple, or, you know, the school doesn't have those kind of partnerships. So the charter schools are here to stay, but I think our work is, how do we bring them back? How do we build that community to say, come back? You know, what do we need to do to bring the kids back? Because it's not like they're doing like so much better at the charter school. It's a convenience thing for a lot of our district. So I think that if there was a way, when I was as PTA president, when I would go out and do events to promote East Side, I said, what else do we do? Who else does this? They go, nobody. We have to do it ourselves. Well, what do we have? Why do we have a community engagement department? You know, how can they help us to get out there and share the great things that we're doing? You know, because if we don't do it ourselves, it doesn't happen. You know, so it has to be owned by the district. There has to be efforts made as a district from with the schools to promote the things that we have, the great things that we have and can enhance, but that's missing. So I think that's what we need to keep working on, is why are we losing these children, and what is it that we can do better to attract them to come back.
Well, that's really good. Thanks for your thoughts on that, y'all. So the next kind of area that I want to cover, right, is this very current issue that that we are in the middle of a pandemic. We're not at the end of it. We might not even be at the end of the start of it, because, you know, a few days ago we had top number of infections worldwide. So this thing is really still latent, even though it's coming down in Austin. It's all over, and you know, flare-ups very possible. Lots of questions still about it. Questions about when a vaccine will be coming along. So that obviously deeply affects our teachers, right? And then it deeply affects the parents, because if you have, you know, 30 kids coming in, I don't want to over-explain this. I know you guys get it, but you know, schools certainly seem like they can be a vector, and yet also parents, to live their lives, are requiring you know, some time without the kids. It's not fair for them to do virtual learning and work their jobs, and it's a very complicated situation. I want to see, you know, what direction you think AISD needs to go to deal with it, or I would also accept if there are, you know, failures of how it's being dealt with now that you want to point out, or missed opportunities. But, you know, tell me your thoughts on this, and kind of, again, if you become a member of the board, right, what are you going to be doing, and what are you going to be pushing for? And this would be Philia's question first this time.
Well, I know that they're doing surveys now of students who want to stay learning virtually, from students and parents. I don't think the surveys are being asked of the teachers, which they should, because if I think that the parents should be able to decide if they want them to come in person or not. And at the same time, the teachers need to be respected. And if they, you know, they have families too, and if they prefer to do virtual, then let them do virtual and others do in person. But I think that the ones that must be in person are the special needs. I just don't see how the special needs students can learn virtually. You know, there's a lot, I used to volunteer as a teacher assistant when I was at, my daughter was at Aikens, and you have to be in person. You just can't, I mean, for those students to really have a good experience, you have to do it in person. And so I think there needs to be options, and whatever the option is, it needs to be quality. It needs to be quality. So when all this shutdown happened, you know, it was very evident that, you know, District 2 was one of those districts that, you know, they had to hurry up and get us tablets, get us hotspots. You know, just getting tablets and hotspots didn't bring our kids on board when they didn't know how to use them. When they didn't know, the parents didn't know how to, you know, they didn't have internet, but they didn't know how to maneuver all this stuff. So it was a big clash. it was the big, it was the unveiling of the systemic racism on education, because everybody at mostly everybody on on the west side, it was school as usual, right? They already know how to use tablets. They have internet, where our students didn't, and so that's the challenge. And so it should have been a lot of investment in the summer, really doing well, helping make sure everybody understood how to get on, because they're still struggling with the weather. Hotspots are not like internet, you know, they still lose. The students get kicked off a lot. So, I mean, there should have been, I don't know if there is an effort with Spectrum or internet service to really, you know, to be a partner with the school district and just provide it for all the students. That's a basic need right now, you know. So I think that that's where I would work on, is to see, you know, both sides. You know, if students want to stay, I had the coronavirus. Horrible, horrible. My husband and I really didn't think we were going to make it. And to think about a child getting it is just beyond me. I could not, I can imagine what it would be for a baby to have to go through this kind of sickness. So if you know, for safety, if parents feel like, you know, their students, they want them home, let them be home. Let them have that peace of mind and just focus on education. Where if they go in person, the other things are the teachers are also going to be asked to monitor, sanitizing frequently, making sure that nobody's going to get sick. And if somebody gets sick, who's going to get the blame? It's going to be the teacher. You know, what didn't you do? What happened? And we have already a lot on our teachers' plate. And so they're not nurses, they're not doctors, and they're teachers. And so I just think that we have to figure out both ways, you know, what's going to be best for the teachers, what's going to be best for the parents and students, and just make it work.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So it's like there's a technology gap, right? And then a technology or like a technology literacy gap, right? Like once you have the technology, do you know how to use it? That overlay.
I have to learn to use it. Yeah.
I mean, it's a thorny problem, and that seems like a good, you know, thing to invest some energy in. And I started using a timer, so that was about 5 minutes. So I'm gonna go to John, and if you want 5 minutes on that, I think that's good.
Well, first I want to say, I could talk for years on epidemics and COVID-19, so I'm going to try to keep it down to 5 minutes. The district knew in March that this was going to be a long-term problem and was going to affect the way that people could actually come to school, whether or not it would take off in Austin. And, you know, surveys said it was going to hit Texas and it was going to hit Austin really hard. And what became really clear is that it hit Latino Austin and Black Austin really, really hard. And the high positivity rates that started were in 78744, 78741, 78702, Del Valley, Pflugerville, Northeast Austin, the places where the schools were getting closed, places that needed attention paid to them. And because it wasn't hitting people who use Town Lake for recreation, the pressure to make sure that we had a plan beginning, let's be generous, in July for this wasn't done. What were they doing there? They were giving a scorecard for the superintendent. Who cares about a scorecard when you have a global pandemic happening at your doorstep? Who cares about hiring a new superintendent when you have a global pandemic at your doorstep? I think the Board of Trustees got caught adhering to norms and not thinking about the big picture, which was planning for a COVID-19 situation. I want to give huge props to the food that they made available to families. That was a lifesaver in so many ways, and that should be continued. Also, the levers they pulled to get tech to people was really great, but that was another missed opportunity. Imagine if, like Ophelia said, They bargained with Verizon, bargained with Google to provide public broadband for people right there. And then with everyone that they handed out, dropped off a Chromebook. You don't just drop off technology and say, see you later. That's not how people learn computers. It was an opportunity to get everyone much more tech savvy. An opportunity, imagine like, hey, Google, imagine if you get a chance to teach people how to use your Chromebook. Imagine how locked in people will be into your operating system. They didn't do that. It would have been a great opportunity for Google, and it would have been a great opportunity for the parents here. The next thing is, I am complete agreement with Ophelia saying that they should have surveyed teachers, but I think they should have gone a step farther than that and just got the organized representative of teachers to say, what will it take for you to be able to teach a virtual class? What will it take for you to teach in-person classes? How will you be comfortable doing that? The CDC gave a list of modifications for people who had diabetes, obesity, immunosuppression in some ways, and parents of kids over under the age of 12 for workplace modifications. Teachers are still trying to get those modifications guaranteed. Like, what if they'd have said, okay, we know who has kids under the age of 12. We know who's partnered to an immunosuppressed person who's over 65. Let's plan our schools around that. Like, these are the people who will be giving virtual teaching. These are the people who will be doing in-class teaching, especially the SPED people. And let's make sure SPED, low income, transportation challenged families will have the kinds of schools that they need. And the other thing is that, sure, it's the people in 78741, 78744, 78722 who are sort of like having the struggles, but people aren't getting infected in these districts. They're getting infected working in downtown Austin. They're getting infected working in HEB off South Congress. They're getting infected in other places, service sector employees. The district and other people needed to make a push to recognize the fact that places where people are getting infected is at work, not at home. And sort of like think that this thing doesn't affect other people. If more than half of the school district is Latino, if Latino families are slammed because their parents are working and they live in multi-generational households, if more than half of the district is being slammed, even though you might have a 1% positivity rate in Cassis Elementary, that's not the world that people are living in District 2, District 3, District 1, and District 6. And that needs to be acknowledged. And the school board and Austin ISD need to be telling parents in West Austin that your future depends on the future of D2, on the future of D1, on the future of D3. And I really think by not including teachers, by not taking the issues of special needs, and by not sort of like taking this grand outward gesture they did with tech, they missed the boat. And the consequences of missing the boat in a kind of climate change situation. Sorry, but by not doing these things and taking it seriously, they're causing problems and fears and anxieties and perhaps some deaths right now. And I really hope Dr. E gets around to sort of like listening to teachers, listening to communities that are getting slammed and putting it through. Is that my 5 minutes? I told you I could go on.
Yeah, I mean, we all care a lot about a lot of things. So
yeah,
we all can just go on and on.
Yeah.
We are running a little long. So I have one last question, and sorry, I need to think about how to compose this, but there's a lot of things that schools do, right? There's college preparation, right? There's getting people on the track for college. There's education about the arts, right? There's music programs. There's sports, right? And then there's different end goal trajectories that you can have for folks coming out of college, right? You could be trying to do some kind of career prep. You could be, like I said, doing college prep. You could be trying to place them directly into jobs. And I wonder, with all of those priorities, right, how would you go about balancing them? And what is the emphasis of our public school programs need to be when there's so many things that we can teach or provide to kids. And man, that's maybe the meatiest question that I've asked so far. And I think we should probably only take about 2 minutes each to talk about it. So I'm sorry, but I'm interested in this prioritization of different types of programs and different end trajectories for students coming out of AISD. And I think John goes first this time.
I told a friend that I wanted to run on the platform that schools are the laboratory of democracy, and it's in schools where people learn to be together and operate in a society. And my friend said, like, no one's gonna understand that. What do you mean by that? So I came to the slogan, quiero un distrito. I want a district that can educate everybody, que eduque a todos, que trate bien a la gente, that treats people well, like we just discussed, and that grows with the city. So I think public schools are unmatched in providing a variety of opportunities in elementary school, in middle school, and in high school. I'm not sure where the sacrifices will come, but I do know that families with SPED needs feel that they're kind of ignored and pushed to the side. So I love more of a discussion of SPED and dual language immersion process to get people who haven't been exposed and given the opportunity to have the career paths because they've been treated separately instead of the ways that schools already integrate people into the process. I know from my memories of high school that some of the most meaningful things are extracurriculars, are sports, are drama, are art, and finding ways that students in all schools can have the opportunities to experiment, excel, and do well in the arts, or just do something in the arts, will give them the kind of skills and confidence to be able to become apprentices in union shops, to become college graduates who know what they want and know how to think and become and be able to negotiate that. So part of that is thinking about the kinds of evaluation and testing that are necessary to get people to move along that path. So I'm not sure the multiple choice testing and the teaching to the test is the way forward. It means defending this kind of rigorous problem solving, creative way of getting involved. Does that. And I know it sounds, I mean, schools do this all the time. So I'm actually asking the school district to defend what they do already instead of trying to austerity their way out of this situation. That said, I think some sports are cheaper than others. Some arts are cheaper than others, and there can be ways of having partners and apprenticeships that can be successful.
Okay, well, let's see what Ophelia has to say on that topic. I think you're muted though.
I had a meeting with parents at Eastside Memorial and asked them, why do our kids don't want to come to school? There's a lot of parents that were being called because of truancy. And they said, you know, we work, both my husband and I, we work, and they want money, and we barely make enough money for them to participate in programs at school because they're too expensive. So instead, they just want to work too, but what they're doing is they're selling drugs. And I remember, she says, I remember when the schools had, programs to help provide internships. I know I was at Travis High School. I participated in the vocational classes, so that's why I was able to get right away into employment at the highway department when I graduated. Well, those programs are not there, you know, and so the dad says, you know, I have a business, you know, I have this plumbing business, and my son, you know, we want him to be part of that, but what is the school doing to prepare my son to do that so he doesn't have to be out there with the gangs and the drugs? So there, I think we need to go back to bringing in those opportunities so our students can get re-engaged. So they see themselves doing something after high school, you know, and so I think that, and I remember exploring into that, and it's still like noted in the books, but it's not active to have those kind of programs. They used to have woodworking, they would have, you know, they still have some, but they're like at Eastside Memorial, I was working with the health sciences, and we connected them with Central Health and community care so they can get paid internships instead of just volunteering. And we had to get them to change their policy because they were requiring them to be 18 years old. We said, well, our kids are 16 and they really want to go into the health field. And so can you help change that policy? Because looking at state law, it's your policy, it's not state law, so you can change it. And we were able to do that. And we need to be able to do that with all the businesses so that our students can connect the world of work with their education and the importance of why they need to stay in school.
Well, that's a lot to think about. You guys have a tough role coming up. Should you be elected? What's going on, John?
I just want to say that was beautifully put, Ophelia. Yeah.
Well, thank you, John.
I think you know, there's so many challenges. So you know, if y'all are elected, I don't necessarily envy you because these things clearly are overlapping, right? There's people being left out, and they're being left out because of, you know, long-term systemic problems, and then there's ways that funding are being eroded, and then there's health impacts compounding that, and then there's climate change impacts compounding that, and then there's like major economic factors putting pressure on, you know, y'all and on teachers and on families. And I really appreciate that the way that y'all are choosing to spend your time in you know, the fall of 2020, the most important election of our lives, is to do something for the kids, to work for the schools. So I need to shut us off because we've taken a little bit of time here, and I've got some other districts to talk to. But I appreciate y'all, and thanks for coming to talk with me, and I'll make sure some other people get to see what we talked about. So I think you both presented some really interesting points.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thank you again.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Yeah, have a good one. See you in a bit.
In a bit.
Yeah, see you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Okay, we're back. These are our at-large candidates for D8, and we're going to be talking about some of their priorities. But I wanted to start with, like, who are y'all? You know, why are you running? What brought you here? What's the background? Or I guess as political people say, why you? Why now? And I think for no particular reason, let's go with Nolita, excuse me, first.
Sure. So thank you for this opportunity to interact, even if it's virtually, with AYD. I appreciate it. School board is one of those elected positions that I'm not entirely sure many of us really think about. So I am running for school board because I want to see that our public education is working for each and every child across our city, that every child in our city has access to the best educational opportunities possible, and that those opportunities are equitably provided. Why now? I'm running because I not only have 20 years of public service experience, I'm trained in social work, I have dedicated my life and my career to working on programs and policies that will lift families out of poverty, that will help strengthen and improve the outcomes for children and families. I've worked directly with low-income African-American and Hispanic fathers to improve their employment background, their co-parenting relationship, and their parent-child relationship. So for me, public education is a social justice issue. If our public education can be strong and effective and engaging and actually help us have lifelong learners, then we have a stronger democracy. And in our city, we have a stronger economic outlook. We have the opportunity to have a strong workforce and people who are able to relate to one another. And I know that our city aspires to be just and fair and socially conscious. But just 2 months ago, the University of Texas, Valerie Stern, came out with a report that identified AISD as the most segregated school in the entire state of Texas. Something has to change. And I truly believe that having social justice, equity-minded advocates who understand what it means to be a public servant, that we need those types of leaders. And that's why I'm running, and that's why I hope to earn y'all's endorsement and support.
Yeah, I don't know how long I'm gonna have to use Zoom before I remember to unmute myself every time I start talking. But why don't we go with Mike next? And friendly reminder before you start talking, unmute yourself.
Done. Awesome. Thanks. Well, good evening. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, AYD, for setting up this opportunity. My name is Mike Hirschenfeld. I'm running for District 8, one of the at-large seats on the Austin ISD Board of Trustees. And really, I'm running based on my professional experience and my track record of doing change management work in dozens of school districts in multiple states across the country. And so I've spent the past 12 years as a passionate educator, really focused on progress through systemic change. And I'm running for Austin ISD Board of Trustees, to be honest, because I'm tired of watching our leaders continue to focus on what I see as surface level symptoms of much deeper problems. And they use Band-Aids and duct tape while disregarding the fact that the foundation they're working from, again, in my opinion, is and has been broken. Personally, I've served as a high school social studies teacher, and I understand firsthand the needs of beginning teachers within AISD, as well as effective recruitment and retention strategies, which is certainly a need that we have. I became a central office administrator where I was able to manage a district-wide system of school autonomy, an annual strategic school planning process, and for me, most importantly, I was able to direct a large preschool expansion initiative that was focused explicitly on our students and families with the most need. And all of these roles required me to have daily interaction and collaborate with principals, teachers, directors, families, and at-large members of the community for that work to be successful. And so because of that work, I was recruited to work at the Texas Education Agency to support a little over a dozen districts across the state of Texas, like El Paso, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Brownsville, Galveston, Spring Branch. But here within Austin, within AISD, I served on the district's Boundary Advisory Committee, as well as the Budget and Finance Advisory Committee. But the Boundary Advisory Committee is really what opened my eyes to clearly deeply rooted systems of segregation and racism that are just ingrained within our district. And so I'm running because I believe that, that committee and the establishment of boundaries exist for the sole purpose of perpetuating segregation. I'm running to bring all of these experiences to the table and collaborate with everybody to dismantle what I see as structural barriers that actually prevent.
Right.
Thanks.
Well, Jared, you can go next. Same friendly reminder to unmute yourself. I always forget.
Awesome. Thank you for that reminder. I need it. So my name is Jared Brackenridge. I am a fourth generation Austinite. Basically, I grew up here in Austin, attended all AISD schools, elementary through high school, basically just getting that student experience. But after that, I went on to college, stayed here in Austin, And at Houston-Tulsa University, I'm getting an education degree, right? Go figure. I've been teaching, substitute teaching, volunteer teaching for the past few years of my life. So education is very important to me. Public education, should I mention. And so basically I'm running because I have a vision for our students. I know that having spent my past 25 plus years here in Austin, there are so many needs that our students have. And my family, many of my family members did not graduate from AISD schools, although they attended AISD schools. And so it's this perpetuated system that we all have noticed. But at this point, we need somebody that's willing to go beyond that. We all know these inequities exist. We all know that our Black students are overly disciplined. We all know that our Black students are oftentimes underperforming on assessments and things like that. So we need leaders that are willing to address these head on with systemic policies. We need people that have the knowledge of the city's history as well as the district's history. This is why I'm running. I feel like we're at a very pivotal point in our school system, and I'm ready to make that change for AISD. So thank you.
Oh boy, man, my tech issues today. All right. Well, man, and it's really cool to hear that I think what all of you are thinking about is the people who get left out. You know, that's good that kind of, you know, all of our options are in agreement that they're systemically like people who are not being reached. And that's actually like exactly what my next question was, right? Because I want to hear your thoughts about the charter schools, right? You could probably explain better than me the problems or the tension there, right? But my understanding briefly is that they're kind of specializing, right, in people who are predisposed to succeed sometimes. That they're catching a group and they have the ability to refuse other people who need different types of care or special care or you know, people who are more expensive potentially to educate, and that falls to AISD. So I really wonder what, you know, if elected, what your relationship with the charter schools is going to be, and how you're going to kind of manage that. And I guess we should rotate who starts. So maybe Mike can go first this time.
Sure. Yeah, I'll be honest, I actually appreciate the tension between the ISD and the charters, because I feel like it's finally causing us to look inward and ask, why are parents leaving? So previously, we used to be able to look at students that left for private schools or for parochial schools. But that was like, you know, talk about hand-picking students, that's hand-picked by socioeconomic status. And so for me, I appreciate the fact that we have to do something differently within our district for parents to not leave. And so I hear a lot of the time I hear, well, charters are stealing our kids, they're taking money from us. I don't see it that way. I see us losing them. And I also believe that if we don't start saying that and truly internalizing that it's us that are losing students, what are we ever going to do to change? Because that's what's within our agency. I'd rather control what we have control over. And so we need to talk to parents, which I've been doing on the campaign trail. We need to find out the reason why parents are leaving. And I'll be honest, there are a lot of different reasons, and some of them I don't personally philosophically agree with. And I doubt that most other board members would either. But for the most part, we have to address why parents are leaving. And that's the way that we put charters out of business. We put them out of business by ensuring that parents don't look for another option in the first place. Nobody is saying, oh, I want to go to a charter. They're saying, I want to leave my school. And then they go and see what they have options. And so that's how I'd prefer to address the issue.
Okay, and then let's have Jared go next.
Well, thank you for that question, Ryan. And so as for me, I can tell you that I personally, as well as my family, have never attended a charter school. We have never been associated with any charter schools in any such way. So as you may believe, I don't believe in the charter schools. I personally received my education through public schools, and for the most part, I tended to turn out really well. However, with that being said, you know, at the end of the day, it's about our families wanting their needs met, basically. And so if our students are having to attend a school that only has operational hours between 7 and 3, and you know, the working families don't get off till 5 or 6 in the evening and can't pick up their child at 3 p.m., then of course they're going to look at other options. And if somebody has advertised, hey, I have hours from 6 a.m. till 6 p.m., then of course the parent has to do what a parent has to do. So at this point, I believe it is up to us as AISD trustees to make sure that we're offering the same thing as it relates to meeting the needs of our students, if not more, because we have to get our students back. Ultimately, many of our schools in East Austin and, you know, several other parts of our district are under-enrolled. And I think at this point, if we want to technically compete with these charter schools as we should, then it's that we're going to have to meet those needs that kind of way. In addition to that, I'd be looking forward to pushing for a very strong and aggressive marketing campaign, such as having, you know, AISD signs on the city buses, such as having tabling at the movie theater, just as these charter schools do. We have to think outside of the box in order to get our students back. As we know, we're losing money to these charter schools that keep on getting approved here in Austin. We're losing money. And as you know, money is what serves our students. So if we can't afford these resources that we need to close these gaps, then of course we have to look at why that's happening. And it is, one of the reasons is because we're losing our students to charter school.
All right.
Nolita, you can go next.
Thank you for this question and this opportunity to respond. So yes, absolutely. We lose $100 million a year to charter schools. We know that charter schools receive more funding per student than public schools. Charters don't actually close the achievement gap. They cherry pick. They sell a grass is greener image, and families wanting the best for their students want to see if that's possible and want to see if that's true. But oftentimes families who have students with special education needs, or even families where students have had a history of disciplinary action, or they get classified as having behavioral problems, the very students who we should be serving well, those families look for alternatives. And then they find that the charter school really doesn't offer that better or that greener grass. And so then they come back to public school. And so here's the other thing I wanted to mention in terms of like how we approach charters. One, I want to see us develop a strategic enrollment plan. Two, I want us to make sure that we're supporting campuses and partnering with community organizations to reach families before pre-kindergarten and kindergarten. So like working with WIC, with prenatal care providers, being just as innovative and creative in terms of our reaching out to parents proactively as charters, because that is one of the things that they do well. They reach people where they are. Third, I want us to be able to recognize that families want quality instruction, qualified teachers, enriching, rigorous academic offerings, and well-maintained facilities. Like that's what parents want. They want us to, we want to be able to send our kids to school, know that they're safe, know that they're welcomed, and that they're going to learn how to read, write, and do math. Fourth, I would like for us to, as Jared kind of mentioned, I want us to, do a strategic advertising plan. And it doesn't have to be like these flashy, glossy kinds of campaigns. It can be something such as like supporting campuses and being really creative about how we do word of mouth. Parents, caregivers, we go to other parents and caregivers to find out like, hey, do you like the school? What do you think about the teachers? What do you think about the principal? And so we need to have that organic kind of proactive communication with families across our city to really bring them into the district. I also would like for us to as trustees, I would like for the school board to really actively engage in that community outreach, to expand community schools so that we are offering wraparound services to families at more campuses, bringing in those community organizations or connecting families and students with ancillary resources that not only helps them be better students and stronger families, but also positions those campuses to be welcoming, to be the types of environments that families will opt into. And then lastly, I would really love for our school district and our board to work with the city for more affordable and family-friendly housing throughout our district. Now, that is not something that we can directly control, but we can absolutely have more influence and really advocate, not just as board members, but rallying community members to push for real affordable housing in our city. So that's kind of my approach to responding.
That's man, really good answers from all you, and I really appreciate that you want to stand and fight, because there's like, I feel like never enough of that. There's a lot of sort of like, yeah, this is a big problem, I don't know what we're gonna do about it. But it seems like all of you are just like in the opinion that we need to just outcompete as a public entity, and I love that because I love public entities. So I want to keep pushing through this. So the next question that I have for y'all is a really easy one, right? It's that we're in the middle of a global pandemic that's totally unprecedented, that puts immense pressure on children, on parents, on teachers, on school administrators. So, you know, how are you guys going to finish that in 100 words, or fix that in 100 words or less? Test is due immediately, and I think it's Jared's turn to go first.
Awesome. So I'll tell you this, I am actually the only candidate that is having to, I guess, be in the classroom with the students at all times. I'm sure, I mean, Nolita is a parent, so she's there, I'm sure, as a supportive parent, but I'm in the classroom as a teacher, basically meeting those students' needs virtually. Many of us, we have never done this before a day in our lives, had to teach virtually. So we're having to come up with lesson plans that strategically will work for Zoom meetings. It's a tough decision, but ultimately as a school board trustee member, I think our #1 priority, if nothing else, before even learning can happen, we have to keep our students safe, and we have to keep our staff members safe. That is ultimately the goal. I was very disappointed to look on the AISD website. There is already a counter, like a tally mark counter, basically tallying how many students and how many staff members have already, you know, reap the unfortunate benefits of having COVID-19. Why are we counting how many people should have COVID-19 or have COVID-19 in our school district? That is a question that I would like to know. Basically, I don't think that we should have any students or any staff members that have COVID-19. But unfortunately, if we were to look at the data around this whole entire country, we know that many other districts have tried these innovative plans, and they have not successfully been able to do so. And so we have to look at that to say, maybe this isn't the right idea. Maybe we should wait a little bit longer and do this when it is safe to do so. Ultimately, I'm very impressed that, I mean, we are making an attempt to take the guidance of our Dr. Escott, basically making sure that we're looking at the data, and that's ultimately what needs to be followed. So when the data says that we can go in, then that's when we need to go in.
Thank you. And then I guess it would be Nolita this time.
All right. So yes, COVID and schooling, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I really appreciate about this particular school board race is that, as you noticed, Ryan, like each of us brings a unique perspective. You know, Mike has the kind of classroom, but also system change. Jared has classroom experience. I have both system change, parent experience, and having really reaped the benefits of what public education can offer to people of color. And so when we look at COVID and returning to the classroom, I want to make sure that as we're having those conversations, that we are super clear about what is safe for some communities will absolutely be deadly for others. More than half of our AISD students are Hispanic and Latinos. For the Austin Hispanic population, the positivity rate is 3.5 times higher than for non-Latinos. So I do not take reopening lightly. I myself live in a multi-generational household. My mom just turned 80 a couple of months ago, and we've been super kind of aware and careful about minimizing the risk, not just to her health, but also thinking about public health in general. Still waiting for HVACs. And guess where those schools are located? They're located on the east side. They're located where we have majority Black and Hispanic students. The filtration, whether or not we have filtration systems at campuses that are capable of the public health recommended, I think it's like MERV 13, MERV 13. I have not seen any data that's publicly and easily accessible to parents or caregivers or even teachers that will say, you know, is your campus up to par with that? And quite frankly, I think in these conversations, we're not having truthful kind of reality checks that when we go back to in-person learning, it's not going to be pre-COVID kind of like social emotional, like we're all connected and able to really be together. What we're going to have is in-person instructional monitoring. And what happens both from a parent and student and educator perspective is that that's not what we want. Educators go into their line of work because they want to be intellectual guides, because they want to be there to support students. Students grow more when they are able to not just have rigorous academic offerings, but be able to take advantage of the settings and be together with their peers. And that's not what it's going to look like when they go back. And then also I wanted to mention that, you know, ultimately, not only do we need to take into consideration public health advice, but also really centering around families that have historically been forgotten, special education students, low income students, multilingual families, and obviously Black and Brown communities. And it is, quite frankly, most of us who are willing to preserve public health and approach this safely, who are willing to continue with the unideal situation of virtual learning. So I think we really need to heed those voices.
And then I think, Mike, do you want to cover this question?
Sure. Yeah, and thank you. And no, Alita, I agree with everything that you said. I mean, I hope everybody does. But yeah, I think one thing that's like, that we have to start talking about, and Noelita did, is that this is not a binary conversation. It's not a, yes, we're going to go back in person. No, we're going to stay virtual. We have 80,000 students and a lot of families in Austin, and everybody like not everybody, but there are factions and groups of people that all want different things. They're all coming with different levels of intensity, and we're seeing the district make changes based on either who's historically like gotten what they wanted versus not. And it seems to be playing itself out in the same way that like we could assume that it's going to play itself out. I think, you know, COVID is a very novel thing, but our reaction to it has not been. The district's reaction to it has not been, and society's hasn't been either. We're continuing down this divisive place, and I unfortunately don't necessarily see that getting better anytime soon. But we need to understand what all of our families and students' needs are, all of our staff needs are, and we are $1 billion school district. We have 130 campuses. We have city property. Like, there is a lot that we can do to be innovative around this. And I do believe like there is probably a need for us to be talking about childcare in addition to how do we get full on instruction back in the classroom, because the same families that are more adversely affected by COVID are also the ones that we've historically left behind, and we continue to leave behind academically. And so how are we ensuring that early literacy is still being met, early numeracy? Like, these are the things that can't be lost. You lose 1 year, it's almost impossible to ever get that back. I also want to address the staff side of it as well. I haven't seen any anything in the published documents about how staff are specifically being supported, and maybe it's in internal communications, but I know that every member of the community that I've talked to is in some way connected with somebody that works in the district, and they want to know. I want to know too. I want to know if staff are going to be held harmless if they do go back, whether it's voluntarily or not, on sick days, on medical costs, on things like that. We lose teachers at a rapid rate anyway. This is just going to be another thing that pushes teachers, potentially like really great teachers, out of the field, and that's not good for kids.
Yeah, not not an easy thing at all, right? And another thing that just comes to mind for me about this is, you know, how many people rely on the food that they get at school. So virtual learning is good, but like, how do you replace that? We should make sure everybody gets to eat. But the way we've been doing it is displaced. And that is an awesome lead in for my last question. And I got other people waiting in the waiting room. So even though this is a really meaty question that I'm sure you would all dig in on, I would appreciate it if you would keep your answers concise. But there is, right, things are going to be different going forward. And schools already do a ton of things, a ton of different things, right? Like there's the trajectory you're on when you're leaving school. So is AISD just is it a college preparatory system for people in Austin? Are we, or are we, you know, failing to invest in like career path things, right? There's also this tension between, you know, the type of education that prepares you for like a professional a lawyer, doctor type of career versus like we provide schooling about the arts, right? That's how people learn how to sing and play instruments and paint and do things. So there are these tensions, and I really wonder where y'all fall. Obviously, we would like all of these programs to be fully funded and also have, you know, sports programs and, you know, after school, and we want it all. But I just wonder about like prioritization, or if you've got like a special soft spot in your heart for a particular like program that needs to be around. Now I'm talking too much, so I have no idea whose turn it is anymore. I'm going to say, Jared, do you want to go first on this one?
All right. So for me, I would say it's more about basically, you know, having that lived experience. I went to Keeling Middle School, and then knew that there was a magnet program, but knowing that I was not able to enter into that magnet program because, you know, my family just hadn't been exposed to the benefits of it and things like that, and hadn't known the process prior to going to Keeling. Same with when I attended LBJ High School, knowing that upstairs they were having lots of classes and things like that, and you know they're automatically at this point ready to go into UT Austin and things like that. So it's just, you know, these type of programs that further perpetuate you know, systemic like inequities for our students and things like that. You know, I do think that our district has some very wonderful programs, but I do not believe that they're equally accessible to all students. You know, we have the AP and the IP, you know, magnet programs and things like that. We also have like the LBJ has the like the health professions type thing going on and things like that. I think that our district also needs to make sure that we're watching what type of programs we're offering and which type of which parts of the city, because as we know, some professions lead to more higher paying jobs in the future, and some do not. And so if we're systemically putting the lower paying jobs in one specific part of the city and then putting the higher, you know, paying, you know, professions in one part of the city, we're not we're not servicing the best needs of every student. And so that's something that I think should be taken into consideration when electing school board members, basically making sure that we have those school board members that have the knowledge of how systemics can hurt our students.
I'll go. Okay. Well, rock, paper, scissors it, Mike. Okay, so yeah, what I would love to see our school district do is, again, looking at how we can reach parents as early as possible, parents and caregivers, and from pre-K or kinder, at whatever point kiddos enter our school district, not only preparing those students to be competitive, but also helping parents and caregivers navigate the school district. So again, I'm going to share a really quick personal story. So growing up, my mom would come home from Burger King and she would smell like ketchup and pickles. Like I can still feel it and smell it. And she would tell me in Spanish, like, if you don't want to be like me, and she meant, you know, right, like working hard and not getting paid a lot. If you don't want to be like me, then you need to study hard and you need to do good in school. And so that was something that I took to heart. And honestly, there weren't counselors who told me like, hey, there's advanced placement, or hey, there's this, hey, so, you know how I found out? Because my friend had an older sister, and that her older sister had kind of gone through some of this. So thankfully, when I graduated from Aldine Senior in Houston, I had the opportunity to take AP classes, and I had passed my AP exams, and I entered the University of Texas with 30+ hours of credit. I want to see our school district offer every kiddo across our city a real chance to have success in the classroom and in life. And that includes on-ramping, helping students understand what lies ahead, what opportunities they might be able to take advantage of. And again, another personal story really quickly. I'll tell my 3 kids, but my 2 older boys, who's in 4th and 1st, I tell them, here's what your options are when you graduate high school. Either you have to invent something to where you have enough money, you have to go to a vocational school, or you're going to go to college. Like, those are your choices. And I think that's the kind of, you know, I say that in jest, but I'm telling them seriously, like, those are your choices. And I think we also have to look holistically at how we offer those types of opportunities in AISD. And we do have great opportunities in AISD. It's making sure that all students have a competitive edge to actually enter those opportunities and take advantage of that. And I think we can do that, but we have to, again, it goes back to, you know, collaboration, partnerships, and strategic enrollment.
Cool. You want me to just jump in?
Yeah, you go ahead. Wait, I just want to say one thing. It's like,
okay,
like Jared, that's like, you're exactly right. It's just kind of messed up that you can't be in the magnet program in your own school. And I've thought about that for like years. And Nolita just said one of my like favorite things, right? Which is like secret knowledge. Like, there's ways to get ahead. And one of the biggest barriers is nobody ever told you, and nobody in your family knows. And now I have to think of something really nice to say about what you're about to say, Mike, but
I was going to try and keep mine super short, but now I feel like I need to say more. But still, no, I mean, so I interpreted your question as like, what's my philosophy of education and how does AISD get to that place? And so for me, like, the purpose of education is to instill in students the skills and tools for self-determination, whatever that is. And I don't, like, for some families, it's going to be, you have to go get a doctorate in something. For it doesn't matter. Like, whatever that student, and I don't even want to say families, like, I want to say that student, like, what does that student want to be happy later in life? It's not always money. I think, in fact, it's almost never money. And it's just, how do you feel like you have enough within you to get what you want in life, whether that's working on Wall Street, or whether it's, you know, being a manager of an Applebee's or starting a business. I don't know. Like there's so many different things, but the school district's responsibility is to create in each of those students a desire to reach a place and give them the skills and tools to get there. And the way that I think AISD needs to shift a little bit, not a little bit, probably a lot, to get to that place where truly every child has that opportunity. And this is like one of the little taglines on my website or somewhere is, if we're not giving every child the ability to be a leader, then we're only giving it to some students. And I think we know who like the students are often that the system picks out. And so I think AISD is too inflexible. I think the district needs to be more flexible, less cookie cutter, and needs to create more personalized options for individual students. On top of that, those don't work well without like really high quality counselors. And I think this is another place where charters do sometimes beat out our schools, is they follow their kids through college and like they coach them and help them persist through college. I don't know why we're not doing that. We have that opportunity. And so, yeah, I think all of those together and really highlighting counseling again, which we seem to, it always falls off every time that there's a pandemic, you know? So thanks.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's more than one way to be successful in life, and that's like a personal decision. That really reflects my experience with AISD too, because I was, how do you say, like, smart enough to have the approval of my teachers, but not like, didn't have that like planning, like where's my life going mindset. I never even thought to ask a counselor, and none of them, you know, like made an appointment with me or like, you know, wasn't required to see them. So, man, y'all are great. I really like all y'all and where you're at and what you're thinking about. And what I want to say before we go, because I've got another group of folks to talk to, is that, you know, in the fall of 2020, right, the most important election of our lives, like y'all have really chosen a hard path. It is not sexy, and you don't get a lot of credit for it a lot of times, but you know, I appreciate that you've chosen to do it. So that being said, thank you for being here. Get out of my Zoom room so I can talk to the next folks. But just joking.
All right.
I really appreciate y'all.
There'll be another election in 2 years if you want to run.
I'm more of the campaign goon than the candidate, but you know,
I hear you, man.
I'm sure we'll stay busy with it. Thank you all so much.
Bye.
Okay, and we're back. So I've got our District 5 candidates here, and we're gonna go through some questions. So the first thing I want y'all to talk about, to tell me about, is you know, who are you, right? Why are you running? What motivates you? Why have you chosen to do this to yourself, to have to run for office? So based on the order on my screen that you guys are in, left to right, and Piper would be the first one to answer. Piper would be the first one.
Great. Ryan, thanks for having us tonight, and thank you to the Austin Young Democrats for holding a forum and hearing about school board, which is an interesting place to run for. I have two little kids that are in elementary school here in AISD. I've got a 3rd grader and a 5th grader. And they go to a great little elementary school here in our neighborhood, and they're getting a great education. My name is Piper Steggy Nelson, and I am the candidate for Austin Independent School District, District 5. The thing about my kids' school is that it is really wonderful, and that they are getting all sorts of great educational opportunities, whether it's really wonderful teachers or the new track or the water bottle filling stations or the incredible library full of all sorts of books. But while I was doing work with my PTA there at their elementary school, I started doing some work with a school in Dove Springs. And one of the things that I saw and found was that a lot of the things that my kids are getting at their elementary school are because our school community and our parents can afford to contribute those funds. At the Dove Springs School, that wasn't necessarily the same. There were lots of amazing things going on at the Dove Springs School, but their external infrastructure wasn't as strong. Teachers were having to pay for things that teachers at my kids' school didn't have to pay for. And I saw those disparities and I thought that is really messed up. That in this day and age, we have that kind of disparity going on. And that was one of the things that got me interested in getting engaged. But the other thing that happened was this pandemic. I don't know if you know this, but we're in a pandemic. And this pandemic hit, and the communication from AISD was horrid. It was, they weren't telling us anything. They were giving us updates that were maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks out. And then they stopped talking to us completely for a period of time. And I realized that as a professional communicator, my job is that I communicate. And as a professional communicator, I realized that that was something we're talking about the school closures process, whether we're talking about pandemics, whether we're talking just about what kids need. There was a great need for not only the district to be communicating with those school communities better, the teachers, the staff, the kids, everybody living around that school, but there was also a great need for the district to find ways to actually engage with that community. And that was one of the reasons that I decided to run as well.
All right, that was good. That was a good answer. It was also 2.5 minutes, but I didn't want to cut you off because as long as we're virtual, I actually kind of want to hear what y'all say. And I hate that the endorsements just turn into this like, show up here, dance for us for 3 minutes. Okay, you can go now. So give me a moment to reset my timers. And
so Ryan, can I ask you, do you want, I'm gonna be real type A white lady here, sorry, but do you want help with the timing? Because I'm happy to set my own timer and time myself and do 2 minutes if you want. It's up to you. Or I could talk for half an hour. What do you got?
We could talk for half an hour, but I'm sure y'all have campaign activity to do. And no, I got it. And I'm gonna remind you if you go over. But I want y'all to say, you know, enough that people get an idea of who you are and why you're doing this and what, you know, good you can bring if you're elected. But so then let's go to Jennifer next.
Sure, thanks Ryan. Hi, I'm Jennifer Littlefield, running in District 5. I have 2 kids in AISD. I have one at small middle school and one at Austin High. I am also a graduate of Austin High. When my husband and I, when we chose our kids' schools, we intentionally opted in to integrated campuses that really reflect the diversity of our city. And I've seen AISD at its best and believe that we're at our best when we're working together, not as 2 sides. Every parent in AISD wants strong academics, arts, music, athletics, and a inclusive and nurturing environment for their child. And every parent deserves that environment for their child. I am an attorney. I do policy work. My job is working with people and finding mutually beneficial solutions for tough problems. For the last 6 years, I have served on a variety of committees working for the district, working with parents in every corner of our community, tackling big things and getting things done for kids. I've had a lead role in bringing a dyslexia program to Covington Middle School, and renovating and reopening the historically Black high school, the original L.C. Anderson campus in East Austin, and right-sizing that for the East Side Memorial students. The campus will now be their new home for East Side. I've also been a part of expanding LASA to a new campus so that students from all backgrounds have equal access to that program. So those are just a few of the things that I have done that I've been really proud of. And I am running to bring that consensus building, solutions oriented approach to addressing what we're facing now, long-standing equity issues, and really getting our academics on par with, we want our academics to be top-notch in every single campus, and we are not there yet. And that's what I'm running to do. Thanks.
Good, thank you. That was about, it was almost 3 minutes, but you had a lot to say, and I like this. I'm not gonna buzzer you guys. I'm just gonna tell you how much time you actually use. That feels better to me. I hope that's all right.
It's maybe a little bit like drunk history at this point. I think we're all kind of tired, like we're all a little loopy from forum.
You know, and it's okay. I was gonna say it at the end to like play you guys out, but you know, of all of the things you could have done in 2020, right, in the fall of 2020, the most important election of our lives, you've chosen this really like arduous and kind of like thankless and logistically and financially difficult thing to promote issues that you care about. So I appreciate that. But let's give Lynn her chance to tell us about yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would say Jennifer said maybe we're a little loopy. I think we may be a lot loopy by now. So yeah, so I am also a parent of 2 kids. My kids are at the other end of their journey through Austin High. So I have a 2017 graduate and a daughter who's a senior right now at LASA, which is a magnet school, a choice school. And one of the things that keeps families in our district are options. There are a lot of options in Austin ISD. People can choose early college, high school. People can choose a special arts program. There are all girls schools and all boys schools. So there are lots in arts program, all kinds of things. So I have about 10 years in my neighborhood school around the corner, and then that's been our journey. And my kids have gotten a really phenomenal education. We're, one of those families who bought our house where we could because of the schools. And I work as a documentary filmmaker, longtime journalist. I'm trained as a lawyer, but my volunteer job is I'm a 5-year board member of something called the Austin Council of PTAs. And we spend time in campuses all over the district we support 112 PTAs. And really get to know people who are leaders, family leaders at those schools, get to know principals, and I've really seen the whole spectrum. And there are schools all over Austin ISD that work really well, and the ones that work well are built on relationships. They're built on respect for every family who walks in the door. They are built on the understanding that every kid really has what it takes to succeed and deserves that. And they're built on the fact that real education isn't about test scores, and it's not about, whether you walk in a line. It's about what you learn and what you do and who you become. And I've heard families, talk about what's working in their schools and what isn't working. And I'm running to make sure that every kid has really meaningful access. In District 5, every school's a good choice. There are no bad choices. In other parts of the city, there are too many kids who don't get what they need, and the data show us that. Black children, students make up about 7 or 8% of our district, but they're more than 20% of the kids who have at-school suspension. We have data that show, kids graduate and then they have to spend their Pell Grant money doing remedial classes, and we can do better than that. I mean, that's not who we are as a city. And I'm running because in District 5, we haven't been talking about that as openly or as loudly as I think we need to be, and as I think most people in our part of town want to be. And I'm running to make sure we're doing that. I have a really long history of advocacy, have advocated for getting rid of the juvenile curfew in Austin. I sit on the Complete Count Committee for the census to make sure we count every single person who's here for redistricting, for funding, and have a really strong history of advocacy at the Capitol, and want to bring that as well. And just that grassroots, what I know of people, so in the district. So thanks.
Yeah, and I think you guys are, it's almost like you know what I'm going to ask next, because the sort of like follow-up question was about kind of like equity in the, like within AISD. And specifically I want to ask about charter schools, right? Because I know there's different types and they have different functions and specializations, but the one thing that you can't get around is that they have the ability to decline some students, right? And who doesn't get the chance to decline any students is AISD. AISD is going to take care of everybody, no matter how challenging of a student or what kind of extra equipment or extra specialized training is required. So I'm wondering, you know, what do you think the relationship between AISD and charter schools in Austin should be? And how would you interact with them if you were elected? And I think we should probably rotate who starts first. So maybe Jennifer can go first this time.
Sure, thanks, Ryan. I think starting first off, every school needs to be competitive. That's just the world that we live in, whether it is charters, private schools, home schools, even within AISD, specialty programs, the programs that Lynn was just talking about, versus a kind of comprehensive home campus. Parents expect choice. It's just a different framework than how we grew up 20, 30 years ago. So charters need to be layered into the mix of when we're talking about keeping our schools competitive, and we should be advocating at the legislature against bringing in charters that do not make any sense when they are not needed here in our community. But the fundamental way that AISD should be like approaching charters is making sure that every student is being served, and making sure that we are really promoting all of our schools and providing a full, like really informing parents about everything from what programs are happening in other campuses to special education services. I hear a lot about families leaving a campus because nobody ever told them what intervention services or what special education services were available to them. And we know what things, we know some of the basic reasons why parents are leaving and going to charters, and a lot of it has to do with childcare. We don't offer before and after care at every campus. It's also things like technology. Charters have been offering Chromebooks and hotspots. You know, we have just caught up with that. We need to maintain that. So really paying attention to what charters are doing to recruit kids that is beyond the the flyers and stuff that they're sending out. But what is it that are the tangible items that are attracting families? And let's make sure we're doing those.
Thank you. Lynn, do you wanna answer that next? What's
Sure.
the ideal relationship with charter schools?
Yeah, happy to. I think charters, I feel like public money needs to stay in our public schools, and charters are a different animal from our public schools. Many of them send millions and millions of dollars out of state, out of our city, out of the classroom, which is where money really needs to be in our schools, to operators, to companies, to, the groups that are running these schools. That's not helping our kids, and they cost taxpayers more money. Per student, charters get more of our tax money than our local public schools do, And Austin ISD loses, given the number of students who are enrolled in charters, about $100 million to charters every year. I think there is real truth in what Jennifer said, that families are not choosing charters for no reason. Families are wise and families know their kids, and every family wants the best for their kids. And if Austin ISD is losing kids to charters, Austin ISD needs to do more to be the best option for kids. We can't expect people to come back to something they feel is less strong for their children. So I think we need to work with families, talk with families about why they're leaving. Some of it is issues of childcare. Some of it is issues of children not getting the academic support they need or the academic challenges they need. Some of it is the climate and the way that families are treated on campuses. Charters have a mentality, they recruit. They have a mentality that they need to lure people. They need to make people feel wanted to show up. And there are some Austin ISD schools that haven't been doing that very well, that haven't been honoring families who walk in the door, that haven't been making people feel wanted and valued. And I think the schools that work are communities where people really feel that. So I think that's part of it. And I think a community schools model, we've seen during COVID, schools are more than schools. Schools provide childcare so parents can work. Schools provide meals for children who don't get enough to eat at home. Schools do a lot. And providing extended hours for parents who need childcare is important. So is providing that kind of hands-on support. How do you get health insurance? How do you find housing when you don't have it? How do you get transportation? There are community schools in Austin that are doing all of that. There are not-for-profits who work with, as partners with Austin ISD to make sure that happens. And it's a really powerful model. And I think, you know, we are all seeing the depth of need in our community. And I think our community is strong. Schools can't do it alone, and partnering to create that safety net in our schools, to make the schools themselves something parents want, and to build that wraparound service has really powerful potential. And then advocacy is another part. Austin just approved, our TEA just approved a new charter school that is for students at risk of dropping out, and it overlaps with 2 schools we have in Austin. It will compete with them. It will cost more per student, and its track record is that it does a less good job than the schools we have. So we need to advocate as well.
Yeah, great. Piper, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Charter schools are not necessarily working for AISD. And I think one of the ways that they're not working is that we are losing kids to charters because we're not providing families with what they need, just like Lynn said. I think about some friends of ours who are from Turkey. They came to Austin as refugees, and the little boy, when he arrived in Austin, did not speak English. And when he went to his local public school, he had a really hard time. There was no one at that public school that spoke Turkish. The school did not provide cultural services or food or any sort of those services. And that family decided to pull him out and put him into a charter school where there was Turkish language. And the issue there is AISD didn't need to lose that little boy and lose that family to a charter. We could have found ways to bring in Turkish interpreters, community members, provide for the cultural needs. We could have done that in AISD. I think the real issue is that AISD needs to do more to step up and compete with charters. I think that there are some really incredible people that work for charters. There are interesting things happening in charters. And I think that in some places kids are being really well served by charters, but that's not everywhere. I was talking to a principal who said that kids who go to charters frequently get kicked out right before standardized testing and get sent back to their public school where they basically have to start over. That's not fair. That's not fair to the kids. That's not fair to the school community. That's not fair to those teachers. That is not fair. And so I think when we're looking at what we could be doing more in-district experimentation. when you look at what the Ann Richards School is doing, or some of these schools that are doing really innovative things, it would be fun to see some of those best practices spread out throughout the district. But I think the bottom line is that even though there might be great people working in charters or some interesting things going on, the bottom line is that charters are really there and are being funded by people that want to destroy public school systems. And so in looking at it that way, we have to be real careful about what we're doing with charters and how we're engaging with charters and what we're allowing from charters. And part of that is pushing back against TEA as they are putting these charters.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment. There were some great answers there.
We're kind of wishy-washy on that one, aren't we?
Yeah, right. So we need to steal their best practices, stand and fight, and then like actually like just take our kids back. That's cool, guys. I'm enjoying talking with y'all. And my next question is even easier, and you'll all probably agree and see it the same way also. So there's this coronavirus. What are we gonna do about it? It's putting immense pressure right on the kids, on the teachers, on the families when they can't send people in. But then there's competing pressures, right, to get people back in because they need school functions as childcare, because people eat meals, the schools feed people. So, I mean, there's about, infinity different like interest groups who all want to see different things out of coronavirus response. And so I'm wondering, how do you see it? And, if you were elected, right, what would be your stance, your posture related to the coronavirus? And I think Lynn should go first this time.
Yeah, sure. I think we have to start first, above all, with science. And we've landed in a really bad situation with the way this has been handled. Infection rates in my neighborhood are about 1.3%. Last week, there was one case in my zip code. And infection rates near LBJ High School, Martin Middle School, near where 290 and 183 come together, are 16% rate of positive tests. And I think it's not a conversation that can just be based on the data where people who are making the decisions live. I think we have to take into account that there are, even if our city as a whole is a 3 or a 2, there are pockets of our city that are still, a 4 or something more. And I'm not going to ask a teacher to go into a situation that I wouldn't go. I think we have to recognize there are kids who aren't learning well at home. There are kids who aren't safe at home. And this is not, we can't go on doing this forever. And my first choice of answer would be to roll back the clock and get Austin ISD, which educates 80,000 students, which is one of the biggest employers in our city, to use that weight to build a strong civic response to this that involved local governments, local not-for-profits, that got families involved. We knew in March, in April, in May, in June, in July, that there was a really good chance we weren't going back to school. And Austin ISD did not take leadership. They were without a leader in some ways during that time. And there has not been innovative thinking, really. And I mean, I will say that I've told this to people before, and I wouldn't say this in everyone's forum, but I'll say it in yours. I feel like I want to scream, like, we're Austin, damn it, right? Like, we can do better than this. And we haven't. But I can't roll back the clock. And what I can do is get people to wake up and do this right now. And there are groups coming together. There's a group that's been meeting since probably July, late July, when the United Way and the Y tried to partner with Austin ISD on after school care, and the letter went wild, and some people in the community, including me, got a hold of it, and we started gathering and meeting. And there's a group forming now to meet regularly of not-for-profit leaders and grassroots advocates and elected officials' offices to really try to figure out what we can do civically to take this big issue on. And it's an issue of returning to school, but it's also an issue of what we do with the learning loss that's happened, with the children who suffered abuse, with the ongoing hunger and loss of jobs that some families are feeling. And I feel like we have this, we can do this if we really come together and see that our lens isn't the only lens and really take it on together as something we need to solve together.
Thanks so much. Let's have Piper go next.
I'm gonna go. I agree with so much of what Lynn just said. I think that the district has not addressed this pandemic properly. We all knew in the spring that it was going to be different in the fall, and they didn't do anything. I think one of the things that they could have done differently is create longer term plans, and they could have mapping out, okay, if this, then we could do this, or if this, we could have done this. And I still think that's something they need to do, because I think that the short range planning that they're doing right now doesn't work. It doesn't work for anyone, but it doesn't work for a single mom that's trying to figure out how she's going to deal with teachers and trying to figure out how they go back to the classroom and how these little kids, I mean, it just doesn't work. So my day job is one of the things that I've been really proud of at SAFE is leadership has recognized that in dealing with a community that is already dealing with trauma, it makes so much sense to create longer term plans. And so SAFE has said, we are not going to open up to full in-person services until December 15th. Anybody who can work remotely, you work remotely. If you have to go in to work with people face to face, if you get to go in to work with people face to face, then you're going to get a pay differential, right? And they did that. They said that. They've been saying that for a couple of months now. They gave us a longer range plan, and that's what AISD must do. They also must recognize that, just like Lynn said, some people, if they can work remotely, should continue to work remotely. If you have kids that have special learning needs, that maybe have special language needs, if you have two parents that are working in jobs that they have to go to every single day, then you have to send your kid to school. And for those teachers and staff that have to be there in person, they should be making a differential. For those of us that are privileged enough to be able to work from home, if we can stay from home, that's great. But it's creating options and recognizing that this pandemic has affected every single person, every single family, teacher, staff member differently, and that we have to provide options. And also recognizing that the longer term academic and emotional and financial implications of this are still unknown. Like, we don't know what our kids are going to be doing. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. We're going to hit a recession likely. What do we do with our finances in the district? All that we have to be thinking about all of that in the longer term.
Yeah, I love planning. I wanted to say that. I mean, that's usually a good answer to figure out how to solve things, is to plan for them. Jennifer, why don't you go next? Tell us how we're going to fix this global pandemic from the AISD District 5 Board of Trustees seat.
Fix it, Jennifer, fix it.
Well, I think that we've covered the lack of planning and the need for vast improvements there. I do think that some distinctions are that I agree that we need to lead with science, but I don't think that the board members should necessarily be taking over the role of being the scientists. We are very fortunate in Austin to have Dr. Mark Escott and really strong public health expertise right here in town. So I would rely on his guidance in conjunction with what we're hearing from the CDC, fingers crossed, unless unless that starts to get too untrustworthy. But for now, relying on our local expertise and coordinating with what's happening in our surrounding districts and being able to incorporate their best practices for reopening. One of the things that the AISD did well was delaying the reopening, because that allowed us the opportunity to watch and see how other districts handled their reopening and incorporate those lessons learned. Unfortunately, it's been a rocky rollout, I would say, of trying to possibly incorporate those lessons learned. Piper mentioned last night there was about a 24-hour roller coaster of communications about the district's reopening plan. Teachers, principals have all been working for the last month or two on one model that they've been developing to bring kids back into the classroom safely. And yesterday, day before yesterday, there was an email sent out saying, by the way, we're scrapping that plan and we're going with something completely different, and you have until October 8th. That is a terrible way to communicate, and not just communicate, it's a terrible way to work with our principals and teachers. Our principals and teachers need to be leaders and have a seat at the table in the process of developing how we are going to implement a reopening plan. The current plan is not a great setup. It's not really designed for face-to-face, what we think of as normal school. We do need a plan to transition out of that when it is an appropriate time. We also need to give our teachers and principals a runway to be able to do that safely. We know that we have kids who are not learning at home and that are not safe at home. We have approximately, on any given day, we have about 1,200 homeless students. Our schools are the place where we take care of our kids, and there are kids that if they get too far behind, it is going to be impossible to catch up. So we need to get them back in the classroom as soon as it's possible. And we know that we have some teachers that are ready, that are comfortable with going back. We know that our public health guidance says that there's a recommendation that we open at a limited capacity. And so right now, what we need to do is talk about matching up those, matching up teachers that want to come back and families that want to come back, and then go from there and figure out the hard parts once we get to it. But I think that there is a way to start with kids who want to go back, teachers who want to go back, and how many kids can we have in the classroom and it be safe?
Yeah, there's just like a million ways to slice that problem, and right, and it just affects so many people so many different ways. It's not, I was joking obviously when I said it was an easy question. Man, I guess I just also want to say, right, that like my AISD public school, that was like a lot of my social interaction, because I was like very far on the edge of Austin, and you couldn't like walk anywhere, right? Like not a corner store, nowhere. That school bus took me to like my entire social world. If this were happening to me, you know, in that situation, it would be, you know, I don't know, it's tough. There's so a lot of facets here. I'm gonna ask the next question so I can stop talking. So this last one, right, is that schools do a lot of different things for our students, right? So like you could look at school, this is a philosophical question. You look at school as like a college preparatory thing. We're trying to get people, you know, prepared so that they can go to the best college and, you know, be in like a professional field, right? And then some people would say that we don't do enough with like vocational training, that you can't learn to work like a real job, you know, coming out of our schools. And some people are, you know, feeling like we're not investing enough in the arts. You can't learn to paint and play an instrument and sing as well as you could. And some people were, you know, would think, oh, everything else that the school does is just, you know, necessary evil so you can run a football program, right? So I guess I'm wondering, with all of the things that schools do and all of the trajectories that somebody coming out of one of our schools can be on, what do you think the prioritization or the highest value of our public schools is? I have no idea whose turn it is, because I forgot. Maybe Lynn, should you go first this time?
Yeah, I'll go first. Yeah, I think that the answer is we're a really big district with a lot of different schools. And I think our priority needs to be making sure every kid comes into our schools and has high expectations, gets real whole child social and emotional learning, comes to a place where they can have that social that you were talking about. They can make friends. They can learn how to collaborate with other people. They have a chance to discover what it is that really makes them excited, right? Like what is your what, right? And we need to have those opportunities for kids. And I think one of the great things, Austin ISD really does a good job of offering options. We have art schools, we have advanced academics, we have amazing CTE in a bunch of different fields. We have dual language schools. We have early college, high school. Kids can graduate with an associate's degree for free from a lot of Austin schools. What we don't do a very good job of is making sure that everyone has access to those options, that everyone has information about those options, that everyone has transportation to get to those options. And once you're getting up toward high school, you know, toward the more challenging coursework, if that's what you're looking for, that everyone is ready. That we've done a good job in pre-K, in kindergarten, in middle school, you know, kind of all the way up to make sure everyone has access to what they would choose. And I think we sometimes have schools that are seen as schools, CTAs for over here and advanced academics is for over here, and that's not right either. So I think we do a really good job of creating a lot of choices. We need to turn the knobs a little bit and kind of tweak what's not working. And I think we need to listen to our community about other choices that people want. You know, we have a lot of really good options for people, but what's missing? And, you know, students know and families know, our community knows. So, and everything costs money, but we have partnerships, we have internships. We have a school in District 5 that focuses on green tech. You know, there are exciting pathways. We used to have a green tech high school. Can you imagine the possibilities of having that here in Austin, where students from that middle school, if they chose, could follow that path and, you know, really get ready for an environmental major, environmental careers here in our own city. And that high school went away. So I think, you know, we're close to really great things. And I think we're close. We have even a great pre-K program that with a few tweaks can be even stronger. And we have partnerships with UT that gather a lot of data. UT does a lot of study about what Austin ISD does, and we know which programs are working, and we know why they're working. And I think we need to, and that information is not collected anywhere on Austin ISD's website. And it should be. We need to be talking about that and studying that and using that. Like, we're swimming in data. And I think part of it is really figuring out which of those things are working, what students are excited about and what's missing, and making sure that we're offering it in a really solid, strategic way. And then one thing, we know that some of those programs actually bring families back into the district. We know from the data that children have been at private schools, they've been at charter schools, and when they get to the age when they can come back to those programs, they come back and they bring that money with them.
That's a good, thoughtful answer. Piper, I'm interested, you know, give me your philosophical outlook on this.
I love the idea of helping kids find their what. I love that. I'm not sure. I think it took me probably about 40 years to figure out what my what was. So I appreciate that. And I think that means making sure that kids, no matter what their socioeconomic status is and where they are in the city and who they are, that they have all the opportunities so that they can try a bunch of different things. And I think we need kids to have a basic academic level. I want kids to be excited about learning, but I also want kids just to be able to read, and I want them to be able to write. And I want to make sure that for kids that are struggling with those basics, that they get the care that they need. I want to make sure that their love of learning is not completely sucked up by standardized testing, and that we are being careful about what we're doing to kids early on in terms of getting those numbers out of them. But I think, honestly, what I really want, in addition to making sure that everybody has that basic learning and love of learning, I want nice kids. I want nice people. I want people that are going to be kind and take care of other people. And I think, you know, to Lynn's point, one of the best things, AISD does lots of really good things, but one of the best things I think they do is that social emotional learning. And they do it especially well with the little kids. And so I've got these two little elementary school kids that started social emotional learning when they were in pre-K, and now they're in 3rd and 5th grade. They are nice people. They take care of their friends. When my son was being told that having his toenails painted was a girl thing, he had 3 or 4 little girls around him stand up to that bully and say, "Oh no, it's not." But that's because they're being taught how to be good people. And I feel really strongly that that is not just something that we should hope for from our school district, but that's what we need from our school district, that they provide the basic skills, that they create a love of learning, but that they just create nice people that go out in the world and take care of other people. But maybe that's just.
I just want to shout out, that was like almost exactly 2 minutes. So thanks for that. Jennifer, why don't you give us the philosophy?
Yeah, so it has to be all of the things. And I realize that that is a cop-out answer, but it really does have to be all of the things. We are fortunate, as Lynn was saying, we are a large district, so we can have a variety of specialized programming for people who are, if you're really into fine arts, you know, whatever you're really into, you can find a place. We also have a lot of great comprehensive schools. I'm a band mom, and I have seen and heard from so many high school and middle school families that the most difficult part of this remote learning is the lack of extracurriculars, that there isn't band, that there isn't theater, that there isn't soccer, football. So it has really spotlighted the importance of those extracurriculars in having our kids be engaged in school and build those peer relationships. All of that is important, but the bottom line is that we have to get the academics right. And we're doing that well in some places right now, but not in every school. And it's not just that we're doing it well in schools based on income level or race of the student population. We actually have schools that have very kind of tough demographics of high poverty, lots of English language learners, and the teachers and principals are finding a way to connect with students and get them engaged and learning. And it's not just about test scores. It's about watching how students track through middle and high school. And you can see the elementary schools where kids end up in advanced academics in middle and high school. And we are doing a disservice right now by not having that be the standard for every single student in AISD. I think very often we kind of succumb to low expectations that, oh, because of a certain demographic level, there is an expectation that there is going to be a low level of academic expectations, and we are selling our kids short when we do that. We really need to raise the bar on every campus. We owe it to our kids. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it can be more, right? The low expectations thing is an interesting way to say that. It was sort of like internalized that public schools aren't or haven't or won't be able to. And I mean, that goes back to the charter school thing. Well, look, I really enjoy y'all. And I think you're in a good position. Like, I mean, I know you guys have to run around.
You sound so surprised.
No, I mean, I guess what I'm reflecting on is that sometimes, you know, elections can be quite bitter. I don't know if you've ever noticed really bitter, contentious elections. But, you know, if I had to be running all around town, or Zooming all around town, I guess, over and over with some people, you guys didn't end up with too bad of a little set there. So I want to thank you for spending some time with me.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. And, you know.
Yeah, thank you.
All of the
Thanks for caring a lot about school. Like, that is really appreciated. It's a lot of work to include these, and it's a lot of work to know your stuff.
I mean, it's a lot of work to care about anything, and yet we still do it, I guess. But look, I mean, all the cool young Democrats are out at the drive-in movie theater doing a fundraiser. So I'm gonna send this along to them, and we're gonna vote during the week on y'all, and we'll make some endorsements. But I think in this race and in the other ones, I think we've got really good options, and I guess just thanks again for being here. And I hope this wasn't, you know, one of the more like onerous or like stressful parts of running for office, which I know there are a ton. It is, you know, getting on in the evening. So, you know, hopefully you guys get like a little time to have like a family life and, you know, say hello to your kids and all that. But just thanks a lot for being here.
Thanks,
Ryan.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Take care, y'all.
Good night.
I will see you guys later.